Hey YouTube, it's Jeff at Darkmoon Metals. Thank you once again for joining me on another one of my videos. Today's topic is pretty much going to be how to safely handle, transport, and hook your regulator to high pressure gas cylinders. So stick around. Whenever you are transporting a gas cylinder, it is important you must have the cylinder cap attached to the cylinder at all times, even if the cylinder is empty. State laws require that when any cylinder is transported or unsecured, it must have a cylinder cap. Once you've placed the cylinder on your MIG, TIG, or oxygen and acetylene torch welding set, secure it with the chain provided. Simply wrap the chain around the tank and drop it into the locking hole. This will prevent the cylinder from falling over while you're either moving the cart or working with the unit. Now, these chains are also adjustable. You'll notice I have a lot of slack left. This is in case you get a larger cylinder than what I happen to have here. Once you get your cylinder cap off of your cylinder, you're going to want to purge your tank slightly. What that'll do is it'll blow any debris or dust out of this fitting. To do that, simply crack the tank and close it. Now once you've purged your tank and you've got all the debris out of your fitting, you can go ahead and install the regulator. Before you do that, I want to warn you that like the fitting itself, the regulator is also made out of brass, which is a soft metal. You have to be very careful not to cross-thread these. Cross-threading them can damage the threads and lead to gas leaks. To install this particular regulator, I'm going to hold it in line with the tank. I'm going to slide the two fittings together, and I'm going to go ahead and start tightening it with my fingers. Now, I'm going to be able to get this regulator almost all the way on without any wrench whatsoever. In fact, it's mostly just finger tight. And in fact, I'm able to get it to the point where all of the threads disappear. Once you've gotten to this point, take a wrench and snug it down. And that's all you really need. You don't want to go He-Man on this because you don't want to damage your threads. Now, the wrench that I'm using happens to be a specialty wrench that came with my torch set. It has the three sizes that I would need to swap out my regulators, hoses, torch heads, and of course, the cylinders. Now, you want to use a wrench that's appropriate to the size nut on your regulator. You don't want to use channel locks or an adjustable wrench. If that's all you have, you can get away with it, but be warned that being that it's a soft metal, it'll have a tendency to round off the fitting on your regulator, and you can cause damage to it that way as well. So just keep that in mind. If you go out and spend the money on a decent set of regulators, it's not going to cost you that much more to get a decent wrench to go with it. And you know, it's like I've said in my other videos, you take care of your tools, they're going to take care of you. Now this regulator happens to be a slightly different design, but it works the same way. The gauge in the back tells me what my tank pressure is, and the gauge up front tells me how much oxygen I have flowing to the oxygen side of my torch. Now, when you turn on the tank, you want to make sure that this adjustment screw is loose. Inside of this housing is a diaphragm, and that diaphragm will help regulate the pressure from one gauge to the next. If you leave this screwed in really tight, or you leave your working pressure on it, even if there's no gas in the line and you're not using it, you have a tendency to keep pressure on that diaphragm. What that does is it deforms the diaphragm and keeps it from working correctly. When that happens, your indicator won't be accurate to how much gas pressure you're putting out. Now, the easy way to tell if you don't know which one is your cylinder pressure and your working pressure, simply look at the maximum PSI on each one of the gauges. The back gauge goes all the way up to 4,000 PSI, while the front gauge only goes up to 200. That's the easiest way to figure out which one's which. Now when I crack the oxygen, right now I have, according to this, a little over 1,500 PSI in my tanks. Alright, basically what you're watching me do now is leak check my tanks. Once you've opened your oxygen valve and you have pressure on your regulator, go ahead and take a mix of light soap and water and spray all of the connections where the regulator meets the tank where the tank meets the fitting, and even if you haven't done it in a while, you might want to check where your hoses meet the regulator. If you don't see any bubbles, you're good. If you do, it means something needs to be tightened and that you have gas leaking. It's very important to make sure that your connections are airtight. Once you've leak checked your cylinder, you can go ahead and start putting your pressure on your working gauge. I'm going to raise the air pressure to 40 psi. And that is the ideal pressure for me when I am doing torch cutting. At the end of your job, when it's time to shut down either your MIG gas cylinder or your oxygen and acetylene, start by shutting off the cylinders themselves. Once that's done, all the pressure is in the line and on the regulators. Open your gas valve. Allow both your working gauge and your tank gauge to go down to 0. Once you've done that, shut your gas off and unscrew your adjustment screw, taking the pressure off of your regulator. There are a lot of different videos out here on YouTube regarding welding safety, gas cylinders, regulators, and things like that. And this is pretty much my 2 cents. Now, is this the end-all, be-all of cylinder knowledge and how to use your equipment safely? No. In fact, you can't really get all of that out of a 15-minute video. I went to school for it, and this particular course, just on bottle safely, how to safely light the torches, how to handle the bottles, what to do if the bottle's leaking, how close you can store fuel gas and other gases together. These are all things that you learn when you go to school. And like I said, 15 minutes is never going to cut it on YouTube. If you really want to get involved in this hobby, go ask the questions that you need answers to. If you don't understand something, read the manual that comes with all your equipment. If you still don't understand it, go talk to the people who sold you the equipment, whether it's a welding supply store or a big box store. Don't leave there and don't use your equipment until you're satisfied that you're comfortable with the operation of the equipment that you purchased. It's simple common sense. Before I wrap up this video, I want to take the time to thank a member of our YouTube community. And I'm going to put his channel name right here. This is someone who saw that I was struggling with my video resolution, and he took time out of his schedule to lend me a hand. He is another blacksmith. He does a lot of stuff all handmade, and he's a very, very interesting guy to watch. And Gary, if you're watching, I want you to know I truly appreciate your help in resolving some of my problems. I'm still limited by my camera and the editing software that I have, but every day I'm getting a little bit better. So, I want to thank you formally once again. In the meantime, I got to get back to work. This is Jeff at Darkmoon Metals. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and keep on watching.